Good afternoon, United Nations. My name is Quinn Semenoff, and today we'll be discussing helpful hand washing. The SDG, or Sustainable Development Goals, are composed of 17 global crises. The aim is to solve these issues and allow for a more sustainable future. The issue that we'll be talking about in further detail is SDG Goal 6, Clean Water and Sanitation. Goal 6 is to ensure access to water and sanitation for all. Worldwide, 1 in 3 people do not have access to safe drinking water. 2 out of 5 people do not have a basic hand washing facility with soap and water, and more than 673 million people still practice open defecation. The goal of clean water and sanitation is to address this issue and provide those with lacking resources the ability to perform safer practices. Especially in times like the present, having the ability to access adequate hand washing facilities helps to slow the spread of diseases. The World Health Organization says hand washing is one of the most effective actions you can take to reduce the spread of pathogens and prevent infections, but when these basic resources aren't provided, major setbacks can occur. Currently, the Goal 6 targets include, but are not limited to, achieving access to adequate and equitable sanitation and hygiene for all, ending open defecation, and universal and equitable access to safe and affordable drinking water for all. My proposal for action is to provide hand washing stations to the country of Angola in southern Africa, where 59% of the population lack basic water service. Nearly 1/4 of Angola's 28.2 million people use water from an unsafe surface river or pond. South Africa is a semi-arid country that has limited water resources, and adequate water supply systems remain a challenge. The hand washing stations will feature a diluted chlorine-based sanitizer liquid, which can be used when washing with soap. The chlorine solution is more feasible and cost-effective than any other alternatives for the locations where the units are deployed. The stations will be operated by a foot pump to break the chain of transmission through touching taps. The 600-liter tank will equate to 4,000 hand washes per one cycle. The water in the tank can be used safely for a minimum of 5 cycles, facilitating over 20,000 hand washes before needing to be refilled. At each station, pamphlets will be available which will include information regarding the importance of hand washing and other effective ways to stop the spread of disease. Not only that, but during the first few weeks of integration, there would be volunteers available to teach the most effective hand washing techniques to the community. We briefly discussed how we would educate the citizens about our plan. Our plan would be to provide pamphlets at each station with information regarding the sanitizing stations. These pamphlets would include information such as the goals of SDG 6, the proper steps in hand washing, as well as additional resources that could be used regarding clean water and sanitation. During the first weeks of introduction, we would have volunteers providing necessary information on how the stations work. They would give demonstrations and allow for Angola to become familiar with the hand washing stations. Our hope would be that families and friends share the information that they learned and are encouraged to participate in our plan. Lastly, we would supply businesses with posters to display similarly to the pamphlets, which would further initiate an interest in the introduction of the hand washing stations. The implementation process for our plan would take approximately 9 months to 1 year in order to be in full effect. The longest part of this process would be to manufacture and produce the washing basins, which would be the initial step. During this time, our goal would be to find volunteers who are able to travel or that are already present in Angola. The volunteers would be put through a training program which would detail everything that they will need to convey to the citizens. During this time, the posters as well as the pamphlets would be produced alongside the basins. Once these are both done with the production process, delivery, distribution, and assembly would take place through different parts of Angola. After this takes place, the volunteers would distribute between the many stations and sanitization would begin. Our intention is that the population will notice the resources we have provided and will begin to use the hand washing stations. The main challenge that we would anticipate is lack of interest and effort by the population of Angola to use the hand washing stations. Our fear would be that people would not recognize how important sanitization is for our well-being and therefore would not participate in our plan. The main way we would monitor the success or failure of our plan would be to look at illness percentages. As we know, washing our hands is one of the most effective ways in stopping the spread of diseases. With over 40% of deaths being from diarrheal diseases, we would hope to see a decline showing our success. We would also record how many hand washes occur at each basin, and if we see a significant incline from the time of introduction, we can also conclude that our plan is successful. I believe it would be beneficial for the UN to incorporate this proposal, especially during a time like the present, where there is a surge in the spread of diseases. While it is our goal to eventually provide sanitization stations to all, it is also important to take the smaller steps, such as initially introducing these facilities to a set number of places, starting with Angola. An ongoing drought in southern Angola has left families desperate and children with no time for education. Nearly half of the population of Angola, around 49.3%, lacks access to clean drinking water. 54.7% of schools in Angola do not have access to adequate sanitization facilities, and around 68.6% of the citizens have no hand-washing facilities on site. Access to water and sanitation has already been recognized by the United Nations as a basic human right. The right to water entitles everyone to have access to sufficient, safe, acceptable, physically accessible, and affordable water for personal and domestic use, while the right to sanitization entitles everyone to have physical and affordable access to sanitation in all spheres of life, which is safe, hygienic, secure, and socially and culturally acceptable, and that provides privacy and ensures dignity. Hand washing is one of the most important mitigation actions against COVID-19 and contributes to an improvement of hygiene levels to those who use the stations to their advantage. For the 6 in 10 people who lack access to safely managed sanitization facilities, there is no feasible way to prevent the spread of respiratory and diarrheal infections from one person to the next. Teaching people about hand washing helps them and their communities stay healthy. Hand washing education in the community has even been shown to reduce the number of people who get sick with diarrhea by 23 to 40% and reduces respiratory illness like colds in the general population by 16 to 21%. If the UN were to help disperse hand washing stations, we would be able to help the country of Angola to lead in the direction of these statistics and improve the health of the citizens. I would like to conclude this presentation by saying thank you to the United Nations for your time and consideration for my plan in helping SDG Goal 6, clean water and sanitation.